Welcome to Impaired Consumer Service Refusal. Learning Objectives. This is designed for cannabis industry workers who are already skilled in the basics of everything, from working in a medical dispensary providing patients, where cannabis is being provided, to working in other social consumption or hospitality settings where cannabis is being consumed. The objective is to refresh your knowledge and awareness and build on your current skills and training to help you reach a new level of responsible cannabis service. One of the most important duties you have is to help patrons consume cannabis responsibly. That'll promote a compliant operation along with a satisfying customer experience. This training helps ensure the safety of your customers and others in the community. Just like first responders, dispensary technicians, cannabis hospitality staff, and other front-of-the-house cannabis industry workers have a responsibility to protect the community. You accomplish this task by not providing intoxicated patrons, preventing your patrons from becoming intoxicated, and by not allowing intoxicated patrons to drive away from your location. Your knowledge of responsible cannabis service and your ability to apply this knowledge is vital to the success of your establishment and the safety of your community. Learning Objectives. Cannabis impairment risks. Refusing intoxicated customer. Controlling your emotion. Refusing service strategies. Body language signs. Managing customer complaints. Designated caregiver and drivers. Consumer impaired driving. Incident report writing. Social and legal responsibilities. Public safety must be a personal and professional consideration of everyone in the cannabis industry. Professionals working in the retail cannabis industry must adopt and employ a personal value system for the safe service of cannabis and commit to preventing the sale of cannabis to anyone who is intoxicated, underage minors, and/or individuals who may be addicted to cannabis. Selling cannabis requires many skills and involves legal responsibilities, that is, the things you have to do as part of your job to comply with the laws. You also need to be aware of your social responsibilities, that is, the things you should do to run a good business and have a positive impact on your community. In providing cannabis, there are several different aspects to your job. Be a police officer, ensuring no one breaks any laws. Be a responsible vendor, knowledgeable about your products. Be a cleaner, making sure premises are clean and tidy. Be a good host, helping to create a friendly atmosphere. Be a safety officer, thinking about customers' well-being and reduces risks. Cannabis is mainly consumed responsibly, but can cause harm if misused, so it's important to sell it in a way that minimizes any potential harm. This means thinking about who you are selling to, how much you are selling, and the customer's well-being. Many government regulators have adopted laws in the cannabis industry to help make things clearer. There is also a lot of established good practice that you can utilize. It may be counterintuitive to those in a retail sales environment to deny someone a sale or provide them with any type of cannabis product. Refusing service can place workers in a challenging and stressful situation, so sometimes putting limits is the best thing you can do for customers. Cannabis service policies, compliance training, and management team will prepare and help you to provide all customers with a wonderful experience that'll help protect them, yourself, and others in the community from cannabis-related harms. In the long run, customers and the community will be grateful for your concern and action, so you'll always have the right to refuse service to anyone you do not feel comfortable providing, unless that refusal is based on the individual's constitutionally protected rights, for example, race, creed, color, gender, sexual orientation, religion. Cannabis impairment risks. All front-of-the-house dispensary workers and anyone who comes into contact with customers must be prepared to contribute to and support responsible cannabis service. This behavior applies to patient check-in receptionists, retail dispensary technicians, the management team, and anyone else who will interact with customers. Staff and operation risks. Impaired customers are more difficult to deal with. Issues may escalate into aggression and violence, Staff are more at risk for harm by impaired customers. Increased costs to maintain industry compliance. Increased staffing costs and a higher staff turnover. Reputation that better-behaved customers avoid. Visits from law enforcement puts licenses at risk. Customer risks. Impaired customers are more at risk than sober individuals when returning home, whether driving, walking, or using public transport, as they are most vulnerable to attacks or having an accident. This training provides the information to help you understand and implement compliant practices in your cannabis operation, to recognize and prevent service to anyone intoxicated, and not allowing access by habitually addicted patrons. When refusing service in the cannabis industry, it's meant to maintain compliance. Every best practice needs to be implemented from checking identification to stopping cannabis service, because once someone is identified as impaired, difficult situations can easily occur in your establishment. Engaging in responsible cannabis service is not a once-a-year activity, it is a daily duty to your customers, your coworkers, your cannabis operation, and even yourself. Applying the skills you acquire through compliance training will make a significant contribution to responsible cannabis service. Refusing intoxicated customer. If a customer shows physical or behavioral signs of intoxication, or you are concerned about the number of cannabis products they have possibly consumed, you must stop providing cannabis immediately. Denying or stopping cannabis service is never an enjoyable task, but it is an extremely important one. When dealing with an intoxicated customer, the customer's well-being and the safety of others in the community depend upon the actions you take. Even though most of your customers manage their consumption responsibly, sometimes it is necessary to manage someone's consumption for them. Telling someone they have had too much to consume can be difficult, if not uncomfortable. After all, most retail workers have been taught to give customers whatever they want, but telling someone they cannot provide any service is sometimes necessary. Remember, sending someone out the door intoxicated is a liability to the cannabis operation and a threat to public safety. When providing cannabis, it is your responsibility to provide it responsibly by using your observation skills to detect impairment. If possible, ask another worker to observe the customer's behavior. If you both agree the person needs to be refused cannabis, you can proceed to know you have someone as your backup, if that becomes necessary. Cutting off a customer's cannabis access involves both good management practices and diplomacy. After all, you are in the business of providing cannabis, and most likely want the intoxicated customer to return when they're sober. So if a customer has been identified as intoxicated, you must stop cannabis service. Controlling your emotion. Never let emotions get in the way of doing the right thing, so that when customers are impaired, they have had enough regardless of their patronage. Sometimes you need to cut off a regular customer, and this task can sometimes be intimidating, especially when they have been visiting the establishment for a long time, or when a friendship has developed. Never let emotions get in the way of doing the right thing. When customers are impaired, they have had enough, regardless of their patronage. So use existing relationships with them to your advantage, by expressing the genuine concern you have for the customer's safety, but be firm. When you decide to cut off a patron from further cannabis service, ask a coworker to watch as you refuse to provide cannabis to the customer. You may need the coworker's help. Your backup person should be prepared to assist and must be close enough to observe the situation, but not so close to appearing threatening to the customer. Whenever possible, enlist the help of a customer's companions too, since there are times when you may be able to convince an accompanying associate to help you stop service. For example, if the intoxicated customer steps away, tell their friend that you must stop service and ask for help from them. Their companion may be able to intervene, and they may help smooth over the situation if you must stop service. Refusing service strategies. While your decision will depend on the behaviors you observe, you may not become fully aware of their impairment until the customer starts ordering their cannabis product before you stop providing them with service. Sometimes the customer may be agreeable, knowing that they're indeed impaired, and agree that they shouldn't provide cannabis until they've sobered up, and you will be able to avoid a delicate situation. Try to move the customer away from other customers before you tell them that you cannot provide them with any cannabis. Keep the conversation as private as possible, and do it in a non-confrontational manner, since this approach will give you the greatest opportunity for a successful conversation. Avoid being judgmental, but be firm. Be empathetic and express concern. Be genuine. Tell them that you are concerned about their safety. Show the customer you understand how they are feeling by saying something like, "I know this is frustrating or annoying, but I am concerned about your safety," or "I just want to make sure you get home okay." Statements such as these are effective and help customers see that you care about them. Make sure that you maintain eye contact while you speak to the customer and nod or shake your head when appropriate. This behavior will show that you are listening to the response, and then calmly and firmly state your cannabis operations policy. For example, you might say, "I'm sorry, but if I provide cannabis, then I may get into trouble, legally along with losing my job." Do not judge the customer, make accusations, or argue. Don't say, "You're stoned," or "You've had too much to consume." Repeat your operations rules. "We care about your safety, and I can't provide you any cannabis, or government regulators and law enforcement are cracking down, and I can't provide you any cannabis or we'll both get in trouble." There are many other statements that you can use when discontinuing cannabis service. Here are some of those options. Statement: "I'm sorry, but I don't feel comfortable providing you with any cannabis." The statement is phrased as an I statement, not a you statement. It is not judgmental, which helps deflect blame from the customer. Statement: "I'm sorry, but I could get fired if I provide you with any cannabis." The statement is phrased as an I statement and is not judgmental. Statement: "I cannot provide your friend with any cannabis. Can you get them home safely?" You should always try to enlist the help of an accompanying customer when stopping service. Statement: "I'm sorry, but it's against the law for me to provide you with any more cannabis." The statement is phrased as an I statement and is not judgmental. It is appropriate and reasonable to quote the law when stopping service too, and be sure to remove any cannabis products that may be accessible. If the customer is intoxicated to the point you are discontinuing service, since they're too intoxicated to continue helping them, if necessary, remove all cannabis from within reach of the person. Customers who have been cut off will often try to persuade you to change your mind or ask for just one exception. Once you have decided to stop service, stick to it. Be patient and remain calm. Simply repeat your decision to stop cannabis service as many times as necessary, until the cut-off customer understands and accepts your decision. Do not be persuaded to give an intoxicated customer after you have stated your case, and if they have accepted the discontinuance of service, move on to other work. By moving on, you not only show the customer that you are firm in your decision, but also that it's not up for discussion and you're busy. It is important to walk away and continue with work, even if you don't have anything pressing to do. Wipe something down and talk with another customer, so you are doing something away from the customer in question. This behavior makes it clear to the customer that you have other customers, and that you're going to continue with your work. Body language signs. Understanding body language can be very helpful in seeing trouble and dealing with it effectively. The table below shows the signs to look out for if someone is getting aggressive, so you also need to think about your own body language. When dealing with a situation, you mean to be assertive, if you want people to do as you say. It's not easy to get it right. You must try to be assertive, not aggressive or passive. Don't give up. If you think carefully about your voice, your movements, and being calm, everything else tends to follow. You'll probably be aware that each person has a certain amount of personal space. If a stranger stands too close, it is uncomfortable. In conflict situations, standing too close may be seen as a threat, so keep a comfortable distance from the person you're speaking to. Remember also that a person from a different country or culture may prefer a different amount of personal space. For example, they may like to stand closer or further away than you do. A barrier of some kind, such as a display case, can help to keep this distance, so you feel more comfortable speaking with people when you are behind a counter than when you are out on your own. This is because the physical barrier acts as a psychological barrier as well. Managing customer complaints. Seeing potential danger early and hopefully preventing it are always preferable to allowing a situation to get out of hand. Depending on the layout of your place of work, you may be able to see the whole of your premises, or you may have to work as part of a team and ensure you check around your premises regularly. Unfortunately, you may have to deal with potentially violent situations when cutting off an intoxicated customer. To prevent injury to yourself and to the customer, you should anticipate problems, as well as notify your manager before the situation becomes violent. If you are caught by surprise and violence is likely to occur, call law enforcement immediately. Try to separate other customers from the situation, but never touch or attempt to physically restrain a customer. It would be unreasonable to suggest that there will never be any complaints or conflicts on premise, but depending on the type of premises, location, age group of customers, etc., this will occur to a greater or lesser degree. Dealing with a complaint is an art in itself. If you handle it well, you will have brought the customer around from being dissatisfied to being happy. However, if dealt with badly, the customer will feel even more unhappy and is likely to tell as many people as possible about the situation, leading to a loss of potential customers. Key points to dealing with a complaint include: listen carefully to the complaint without interrupting. Show that you understand their current situation. Apologize for what's outside of your control legally. Seek an immediate solution and involve management. Have an escalation plan. That is a plan for if things get worse, and this is likely to include communicating the problem to other staff, and may involve calling law enforcement. It is important not to raise your voice or argue with the customer, so observe how other staff deal with issues and consult your manager. Remember, when people are angry, they often throw insults, so do not take insults personally or retaliate. You have to remain professional. Dealing with complaints requires you to have patience and to keep others around you calm. Designated caregiver and drivers. Sometimes the intoxicated customer will be driven to your establishment with a caregiver or a companion that's a designated driver. Designating a driver is the most responsible thing a customer can do if they're impaired. You may be able to enlist their help in driving the customer home. However, the situation can become much more challenging when the customer has driven to your establishment alone. Although a designated driver may not always be present, when dealing with impaired customers, you are still responsible for monitoring their level of intoxication and trying to stop them from driving when necessary. A designated driver is typically an individual within a group of people who agrees to refrain from cannabis consumption so they can safely drive others home afterward. Some cannabis operations participate in designated driver programs and encourage their use or recommend ride-sharing services. For example, Uber, Lyft, etc. When you cut off a patron from the further service of cannabis, try to enlist the assistance of their designated driver or a ride-sharing service to help care for the impaired consumer. You should never force or throw out an intoxicated customer, including one who might be disturbing others or causing a scene. If you must ask a customer to leave, arrange transportation for them and anyone else with them who may be impaired. You should do everything you can to prevent that person from becoming a risk to themselves and others if the consumer decides to leave while intoxicated. Aside from physically restraining someone, do everything you can to prevent an intoxicated customer from driving away, since it is better to risk an angry customer than to risk lives. You should never force or throw out an intoxicated customer, including one who might be disturbing other customers or causing a scene. Consumer impaired driving. Your goal should be to prevent an intoxicated customer from driving away from the premises, and as we've mentioned, the best result is to ask for the car keys and to arrange safe travels with a friend or relative. However, some intoxicated customers will resist giving you their keys, while others will argue that they are not even intoxicated. You should convey to the intoxicated customer calmly and professionally that you and your manager believe the customer is too intoxicated to drive. Tell them that being stopped by law enforcement will surely result in being arrested, so explain that you are not permitted to allow the person to drive from the establishment. Again, suggest to the customer a safe ride from someone else, and offer to make the call for them. Explain that you'll gladly pay the taxi fare, and the customer can pick up their car in the morning. In many communities, ride-sharing services, for example, Uber, Lyft, etc., or other groups provide programs that include towing a person's vehicle home, or a second driver to deliver the car. If the driver insists on driving, you have no other choice than to call law enforcement, so be prepared to provide them with the following information: vehicle's license plate number, brand, model, and color, vehicle location and destination. Immediately write down the event in your incident log, with as much detail as possible, so it also includes your actions and customer responses. Incident report writing. It's a good idea to document any cannabis-related incident, such as your having refused service. Keep a notebook handy to jot down the date, the time, and what you did to keep the customer from accessing cannabis. Ask yourself whether the customer refused offers of transportation, and if they created a disturbance. If so, write it down, as well as any other unusual events in an incident log for future reference. Always remain professional, courteous, and firm once you have made a decision to refuse a sale or service. Resist the urge to let a customer talk you out of your decision. The best way to protect yourself and your establishment are to write down the action you took to handle any situation involving intoxicated customers, whether or not a problem developed. If you and your establishment can show that you've handled intoxicated customers appropriately in the past, cannabis industry regulators may be less likely to find you liable if a problem does occur. Some cannabis operations use incident reports for maintaining record keeping as part of their standard operating procedures, SOPs. Others have workers write in a notebook, but you should always ask your management to show you what to do and how to fill out reporting requirements. You should record all incidents for a variety of reasons. It can be used as a learning tool and can assist in communication between staff and management. It provides an accurate record for law enforcement or insurance purposes. It can help prevent similar incidents from happening again. The record should include the following: date and time, what happened, who was involved, how the situation was managed, whether law enforcement was called, any witnesses and their contact information. Improving skills to manage impaired customers and refusing access to cannabis will make it easy to work as part of a team to provide an efficient service which makes customers feel noticed and welcome. This will include contributing to the good standards of the premises and creating the right atmosphere, so customers are aware that bad behavior will not be tolerated. Everyone will have to enforce their legal responsibilities and think about social responsibilities. In a refusal of service or conflict situations, you will need a lot of patience. Try to learn from your more experienced colleagues and observe what they do and say in different situations. Practicing also helps you to get it right, and learning from your successes along with mistakes is what these techniques are really about. Thank you for viewing Impaired Consumer Service Refusal.